Ambassador, thank you for coming to Ukrinform. Hello.
Thank you. Добрий день. Thank you
Добрий
for the
день.
invitation.
So one of the topics of your recent meeting with Deputy Prime Minister, Minister for European and Euro-Atlantic Integration, Ola Stefanishina, was the development of the government's institutional capabilities in the field of European integration, taken into account the increase of the volume of tasks that came with the start of negotiations. What exactly, in your opinion, should the Ukrainian government strengthen in this sense to fulfill these tasks?
I'll get to your question right away. I just want to say thank you for inviting me here during very emotional days. I recently came back to Kiev after some weeks away, and we celebrated on Saturday the 33rd anniversary of independence, and yesterday, unfortunately, we witnessed the largest attack by Russia since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. They pummeled again the energy infrastructure, houses, killed people. So I really think that it's time for all of us to hunker down and help Ukraine protect itself with more air defense and ability to withstand the terrible attack. So as to your question, what is remarkable about the Ukraine is that while it's defending itself in this terrible war, it's actually reforming and preparing itself for Euro-Atlantic integration. I know that getting ready for EU acquis communautaire, the body of laws, is not very easy, and that the government has already made a lot of strides. The Office of Deputy Prime Minister we have been working with for a number of years. Today I went to see some of the premises where they get together with experts and prepare for the various stages of the accession talks. And I think this capacity needs to be further strengthened because the talks are very technical. A lot of it, for a country to absorb the full body of laws and norms of the EU is not an easy task. And I wouldn't say that there are specific areas of weaknesses. It's just the whole process and the whole machinery and the teams just need to be built up and strengthened over time.
Well, according to our Ukrainian officials, they aim to open the first cluster of accession negotiations in 2025. Now Brussels is waiting from Kiev the two roadmaps on the reform of public administration and reform in the area of the rule of law. When should they be provided, and what criteria will be used to evaluate them?
Well, what we have done is on the 25th of June, the official negotiations started, which was really an important moment. And shortly after that was the first so-called screening of Ukrainian legislation, whether it is in line with the EU acquis. And it started with public procurement. And now in September, we will continue exactly with rule of law and basic norms and public administration, as well as economic norms. And the two roadmaps will be based on that, on the recommendation that will result from the screening process of these chapters. So what the teams are doing right now, also with the help of several European Union experts, is preparing for the screening, identifying the areas in Ukrainian both legislation and institutional practice, comparing it to the norms that are required by the European Union. And on the basis of that, there will be the recommendations for the action plans.
Corruption and anti-corruption efforts, very sensitive topic for Ukraine, of course, for the EU officials who are closely watching our efforts. Recently, we witnessed illegal enrichment charges being pressed on the head of the anti-monopoly body. We saw the Deputy Energy Minister being detained on bribe charges. How does the EU view such facts? As an illustration of further widespread corruption in Ukraine, or as an ongoing campaign aimed at graft purge?
Well, I would certainly lean towards the second option. I'm not saying there is no corruption in Ukraine, but over the last 10 years, Ukraine has made huge efforts to eradicate corruption by closing space for corruption, by building institutions, by adopting a number of laws, by making public officials do very intrusive asset declarations, for example. And the reason I mention this is because even institutions such as Transparency International has tracked progress of Ukraine, and over the last 10 years, from 2013 to 2023, Ukraine bumped by 40 spaces. It was country at the level of 144th country in terms of perception of corruption, so bad, out of 180, and now it's 104. So there has been very, very palpable and significant progress, but obviously, you know, with corruption, you can never be done forever. And you have built independent institutions. They are our key partners, the three anti-corruption institutions, whether it's the prosecution office, the investigation or the prevention of corruption, and the High Anti-Corruption Court. And I always, when I meet with the heads of these institutions, I tell them that it's extremely important that they keep the integrity of their institutions and make sure that they are able to discharge their tasks because effective anti-corruption fight is an important part of European integration, and that there cannot be a shadow of doubt about this institution because they are such important building blocks for the fight against corruption.
Well, as the country struggles to keep its budget up, we understand that the mechanism to use Russian frozen assets, those frozen abroad, is very important. So on June 13th, the G7 leaders agreed on a $50 billion loan for Ukraine using those assets. There is yet a mechanism to be designed for Ukraine to actually receive those funds. When can we expect such mechanism to be drawn up?
Well, there are two aspects to the answer. One is that the G7 mechanism for the 50 billion loan that will be backed by the proceeds of assets is being worked on. I think we are in final stages of developing the actual mechanism. But what is important to remember that the European Union, before the G7 process was agreed, actually took action and sequestered the assets because 2/3 or 3/4 of the assets are actually in the European Union. In fact, in Belgium, in a company called Euroclear. And we have received the first transfer of this in the amount of 1.5 billion euros this July. And all of the money is destined to go to Ukraine. It's going to go to purchase weapons through several member states, ammunition. It's going to come to Ukraine to pay for buying weapons in Ukraine, therefore eliminating the transport and logistic costs. And a portion of it also goes to the winter preparedness on energy. So the 1.5 billion is already happening. It's being contracted and will be coming to Ukraine in terms of support, either direct procurement or weaponry very soon. So that is on separate track. Mm-hmm. That happened before the G7 agreement. Any future proceeds will then be folded into this 50 billion loan that is being finalized, the mechanics.
Speaking of peace tracks, achieving peace, ensuring peace in Ukraine, what is your vision of the second peace summit in terms of Russia's actual presence at this event, given their obvious disregard of international law? And the second part of this question is, is the EU exploring options for ensuring better support for Ukraine on the part of the conditional global South nations?
Well, I'll get to the Global South right away. From the very beginning of President Zelensky's peace formula, we have really redoubled our effort to reach out where there is a Ukrainian embassy together with Ukrainian diplomats. We're not, all of our embassies worldwide have been engaging with partners. So there has been really a very strong diplomatic activity. We have been very supportive of the stance in the European nations formations. So this is something that we have been very actively supporting Ukrainian outreach, and the amount of diplomatic skill that was and energy that was put into reaching out to the Global South. Look at the conference in Switzerland. It had close to 100 nations, over 100 when you count also the international organizations. So this, I think, was an important message of support for international law and backing Ukrainian stance. Now, whether Russia will be at the second peace summit will be very much determined by Ukraine. I mean, nobody's dictating to Ukraine what a just peace should look like, and I think it's going to also be reflective of what is happening on the battlefield, whether on the territory of Russia or whether in the Ukrainian East. So I'm just reiterating that I hope that the alliances that you are relying on are indeed bringing the support timely to Ukraine to strengthen its position for any future negotiations.
Well, apparently our defensive forces are working on strengthening the negotiation position ahead of the potential talks. But also apparently we still have a pressing problem with those strikes that keep coming from the Russian territory, all those bombers launching missiles and bombs on Ukraine, on the border territories and deeper inside. What is your take on our Western partners eventually allowing Ukraine to use their weapons to also launch strikes deep inside Russia to prevent those devastating missile barrages from pummeling Ukraine?
Well, as I mentioned at the beginning, we lived yesterday through the largest attack since the full-scale invasion, and I can only reiterate the words of my boss, High Representative Joseph Borrell, who has very openly called for lifting the restrictions on long-range missiles, because Ukraine should be allowed to defend itself effectively and in line with international law. So I can only agree with my boss on this.
It's great to hear that you're in the same line with
my boss.
Yeah, sure. Well, just to wrap this up, return to the European integration line. Recently, we heard about the creation of a new position of Deputy Chief of European Integration at the regional military administrations across Ukraine.
And mayor's offices.
Yes, yes. How does this correspond to European practices in general, and how effective do you think these officials could be in bringing Ukraine closer to the EU?
Well, becoming part of the EU is a whole society effort. And in that sense, it's really important to have understanding of how the EU functions at all levels of government. And once in the EU, the regional and local level will be an important partner to similar entities in other member states. The regional policy is one of the regional and urban policy is one of the strong features of EU policy. So I think it's never too early to start that process. I don't think there is going to be a specific role in the actual accession talks, but sort of familiarizing and being a partner that is capable of bringing the EU to the regional or local level to be able to use funds at regional local level is important. So we welcome this, but this is not something that the EU prescribes, because it's up to each individual country to organize itself internally. But in general, we welcome this, and we will be supporting with training and peer-to-peer learning this effort. So we welcome that.
Well, thank you, Ambassador. Thank you again for coming to us, for sitting down with us for this interview. And I hope the coming weeks and months will bring us more exciting news to discuss with you here in our agency. Thank you.
Thank you very much for the invitation, and Slava Ukraini.
Героям слава!